Alright, so right now when we look at this, we get some really nice chiseled brick area, but our mortar area isn't finished. So let's go ahead and make some room down here and start looking at creating some mortar. What I'm going to do is go into my generators here and grab two nodes, two noise nodes, and that's we want to do maybe a purlin noise and a purlin noise, and then moisture noise is pretty good. So let's grab moisture, which is this guy right here. Now my purlin noise is my bigger surface information I'm going to adjust, and this is going to be my smaller layer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit space, grab my blend node, and I'm just going to drop this into here, and then grab this guy and drop it here. And then what I want to do, you can see we only see our top or our foreground one. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply, or I'm sorry, overlay that on top, and you can see now we get a nice mix. The next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of some of these dark areas, so I'm going to hit spacebar and type in levels. And I'm just going to connect that. And in my levels node, I'm going to just move this over to the center so it's a little bit lighter gray than the black, which might be a little bit too tough. Alright. Now what I want to do is I want to blend both of these before we go into our normal map. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another blend node from here. And what I want to do is I'd like this to go into my foreground. And then I'm going to select that one and delete it. And then right before it goes into my normal map, I'm going to go ahead and select this and drop it right into our background here. Let's kind of move that up a little bit. Now if you want to see it active, we can grab and just click it into there. And what you see is we don't actually get any of the, we don't get the correct information, right? Even if we go in here, we select, instead of copy, for example, overlay, you can see all we're doing is overlaying that pattern onto the exposed brick area. So none of these options are really going to help us get what we want where it affects the mortar. What we need to do is create a mask that we're going to plug into the opacity channel of our blend node. So what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and move this up, and I'm going to make sure that on this blend node I am going to leave this one back on copy. So we're going to end up with something that looks like this. And so what I want to do is go ahead and grab our tile generator from down here and just hit Control and D, and I'm going to move it up here a little bit. Now what I don't want is if I click on this, it's running from our grayscale image into this. I don't want any of that grayscale information. I really just want the bevel. So I'm going to grab the bevel here and I'm going to replace that link. So now you see we have our tile generator here. Again, I'm moving it up here. Let me kind of move this down a little bit so you guys can see that. Another thing I don't want is this gray area. I want it to be very, just very intense black and white. So if I select this, I'm actually going to hit Control and S to save this really quick. On this area here, I'm going to scroll down until I find my luminous by scale. And around this area, we want to grab our, let's find our luminous. Instance parameter, luminous. There we go, luminous by numbers off, and then here's my variation. I'm going to move that all the way to the left so we only see our white. Now the next thing I need to do is get rid of this gray area, so I'm going to hit spacebar and just grab those levels again and connect it this way. And then inside of here, what you'll notice is if I move this over to the left, it really sharpens up that area. See that? Kind of, maybe I'll move that a little bit this way. So we get a really nice, clean, crisp edge there that we can use to overlay. I'm going to save that too, because at this point you kind of get a little, it gets a little crashy. Now, if I plug this in, what you'll notice is into our, whether it's our blend area or down here, into the total blend into our normal, what we need to do, what it is it's just going to expose the brick, right? Because it's a white. The white is our exposed area in our mask. So I'm just going to invert that. So I'm going to hit spacebar, type in invert, and I want invert grayscale. And let's make sure that I undo that and nothing. Let's select this one so that it attaches it to that one. So let's try that one more time. Invert grayscale. You can see it attaches there, and we get a really nice invert. Now right now, this blend node is what's controlling our mortar, and this is controlling our brick. So you notice that there's a third option on blend, and that's opacity. Go ahead and drag and drop this in there. Now what you'll notice is the scale's a little bit too big, but it's now only showing these into the mortar area. So what we can do is on our moisture noise, you know what I might do is I might just switch these up and put our moisture noise on top and then leave our Perlin noise at the bottom. So let's like reconnect these like this. Gives me a little bit more of a adjustment that I want. Now with this moisture noise selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit spacebar and type in transform 2D. What's nice about transform 2D is it gives you a bunch of parameters that allow you to adjust the scale. Um, so you can see here there's a width and a height stretch, a transform matrix. This is the angle or the rotation. Something else that's kind of cool is on this transform node, what we can do is we can actually break this up. So for example, like you can see this multiply by 2 and divide by 2. If we divide it by 2, we click that a couple times, you can see that we can slowly divide that up and it starts to break it. It starts to break it into smaller chunks. And that gives us a little bit more surface property in our mortar. I mean, if you want it much, much smaller, you can click on that as well, again. So there's times when mortar can be quite messy and it can spill over and onto brick. You can see in here some examples of it. So we're going to go ahead and try to emulate that now inside of our Substance Designer. Alright, so let's go over here. Now remember, this is where we created our mask for our brick. So I'm going to click out here and I'm going to hit space, and we're going to use another slope blur grayscale. And we want to use a fractal. Now what the fractal sum for is, it's actually noise. So just think of it as a noise. So let's, here we are, hit spacebar and type in fractal sum for. And what you'll see is this is noise. Now it's pretty big and it's sort of messy. So with that said, I'm going to just grab, here we can kind of do this out here and then reconnect it. I'm going to grab another transform 2D and we're going to divide that up a couple times. Alright, so let's connect this. Now mind you, last time, because there's so much information here and it's really messy, we don't want to divide it actually, we want to multiply it. So I'm going to double click that a couple times. You can see now we get a lot more noise. And remember, this is our fractal sum. So what we want to do is plug it into the slope, not necessarily the grayscale image. And this is going to control the amount of the way that it's distributed across that area. Let's kind of bring this closer to here. So let's move this up here. Let's grab both of these and move it down. And what I want to do is I want to grab the original mask here and then drop that into grayscale so that feeds it in. Now what we want to do the same as last time is we want to take our samples all the way up to 32, and instead of min we want to go max, so that now we're controlling that area around it. See how it's starting to spill in and over the other parts of the brick? Alright, so as you probably noticed, I'm going to now grab this one and drop that one instead of that one into our blend. You can see it's really, really crazy, right? It's like a very sloppy job. This bricklayer would totally get fired. So what I'm going to do in here is just take my intensity down until I get it to a point where I kind of like it, where it's not as messy. Bring it way down, so something like that. And you can see it's not as crazy, but we're getting some really nice mortar information there, right? It's almost like a horror scene wall. The very last thing we need to do in this video is, do you remember we created this height map here? Well, what I want to do is I want to swap this this new blend node out into the height. So this is our new sort of our new height map. So all I'm going to do is select this, hit Control D, and drag this down here. And then we're going to swap this input out for our height input. Now notice that we have it running from our old blend one. So what I want to do is plug this in. Here's our new blend. There's our height. And I'm just going to run this one into it here. And there's our new height map. And they're both controlling both our height and our normal map input.